Leaves are the primary photosynthetic organs for most plants, but beyond the capture of light, leaves are the site where most water loss occurs. This can be a real problem in a hot and arid environment. Here, I have two plants. One is not adapted to dry environments, and this one is. Notably in this plant, the leaves are much thinner. On the other hand, this plant has much thicker leaves, and the leaves are much harder. This here is a Banksia. This is a Hakea, two Australian plants that have thick and hard leaves and are adapted to an arid environment. We call plants with this particular kind of adaptation sclerophilous, or bearing hard leaves. These leaves are much harder because the actual mesophyll of the plants contains sclerenchymal cells called sclerids. These lignin-fortified cells are incredibly dense and are hard and prevent leaves from wilting. Wilting is incredibly damaging to plants because it collapses the xylem. When the xylem collapses, transpiration is no longer possible, and this eventually kills the plant. While adaptation to water loss can occur at the macro level, a lot of what we're seeing in sclerophilous leaves are occurring at the micro level. Here, we can look at the cellular adaptations to aridity in Banksia and Hakea. On this slide, we can see a Banksia leaf in transverse section. Let's orient ourselves. This central part is the vascular bundles, and you can see the xylem and phloem here. If we focus on the lamina of the leaf, we see the sclerid cells that provide support and structure for the leaf, making rigid structures around the mesophyll cells where most of the photosynthesis occurs. These are the structures in the leaf that are keeping it propped up and prevent the leaf from wilting. This expands the spongy mesophyll to allow continual exchange of gases and water, even in low water conditions. If we focus back on the underside of these leaves, there's something notable here too. The stomates are sunken into the spongy mesophyll in what are stomatal crypts. If we increase the magnification, we can actually see the guard cells and stomates in these sunken areas of the leaf. These hair-guarded crypts slow the diffusion of water out of the cell. They also slow the diffusion of carbon dioxide into the leaf, but for the slow-growing species, the trade-off is worthwhile. This is an adaptation to arid areas because it limits how much transpiration can occur by creating an insulating zone of air that is often filled with hairs. If we switch to the Hakea, we can see another adaptation to aridity. Immediately, we can see the leaves are round, which means that there isn't a surface or underside of the leaf to orient the cell layers. We can see the vascular bundles here, but we'll focus on the mesophyll in this slide. We can still see the sclerids in this leaf providing structure, but without a top surface or underside, there isn't a clear distinction between the spongy and palisade mesophyll. If we zoom in, we can see the stomates that line the edge of the leaves and all along the surface of the leaf, but we can see this thick layer on top of the surface. This is a thick, waxy cuticle that helps insulate the leaf against excess water loss from evaporation from the surface cell layers when water is at a premium and the stomata are closed. The adaptations that we see in these two plants lower photosynthesis efficiency because the structures at a cellular level impede the maximum amount of light that can be captured by the plant cells. These cellular structures are also costly to make, so arid adapted plants often have long-lived leaves to make the most of the investment of resources. So to recap, there are a few adaptations to aridity that can be seen at the cellular level in leaves. Leaves can have sclerids in their mesophyll, which prevents the wilting during dry climates, while certain plants can have sunken stomates or even thick waxy cuticles that prevent excess water evaporation from the leaf. And to make the most of their investment, these drought-adapted leaves are often longer lived to make the most of the resources that these plants have.